So I'm currently getting myself through something that I'm calling a major spike. This is a spike that is louder and more intense than my normal spikes, and something that I've really had to get my head around, despite the fact that I have 21 years of experience with this stuff. I made a video about this a few weeks ago, and the video is already getting quite a few views, and I wanted to make this video a follow-up video discussing more thoughts on how to get through a tinnitus spike in the long run, and how I think it's important to try our best to try and do normal day-to-day activities and things that we enjoy specifically, despite and regardless of the fact that we are going through a spike. So I want to share with you a situation that I was faced with last week. I was 2 weeks into a major spike, and I was faced with a very important work assignment that meant me traveling from Norway, which is where I'm based, on an aeroplane over to the UK, and more specifically, it meant lots of traveling on trains within the UK. Now, I know from experience that the trains in the UK can be quite loud. They can, even when you're sat in the carriage, they can be between 72 to 80 dB. And when you are doing that sort of traveling for many, many hours, which is what I was doing, it can sort of cause a little bit of concern, specifically when you're going through a spike. So the situation that I was faced with was I was 2 weeks into a major spike, one of the worst spikes I've ever been through. But at the same time, I was faced with the prospect of doing a lot of traveling on loud trains, but on an assignment that was really, really important to me and really, really cool. I really wanted to do this. So I had to put things into perspective, and I want to share that thought process with you today. Now, the first thing I think is really important for me to share with you is that obviously, if you are going through a spike, or if you just have tinnitus generally, and you are wondering whether you should do a particular activity that you want to do, the reality of it is that I can't tell you, I can't advise you, and this video really can't really advise you on whether you should or shouldn't do that activity. And the reason why is for obvious reasons. Only you know how bad your tinnitus is, only you know what activity you're going to do, and only you know how important that activity is to you. But I thought it'd be interesting to share my thought process with you, just to get some ideas going in your head if you are faced with a similar situation. So the first thought that I went through was, how important is this activity to me? I think when you're faced with these situations, which are a tough, let's face it, it's a tough decision to make, how important is this to me? I think it's important to put things in a value system, because that's how life is. Some things are more important than others, right? So I looked at this activity and I thought to myself, how important would it be if I didn't do this? If you are faced with an activity that's not really that important, but there is a chance of you aggravating your tinnitus spike, or even just your tinnitus, do you really need to do that activity? If I'm faced with that situation, then I won't do it. If it's not that important to me, then I just back out. I'm a person with tinnitus. I don't need to do this activity because I have very bad tinnitus. That's my first thing. But in this particular situation, this activity was really important to me. Really important to me. It involved something very, very cool. So I put it in the value system and I said, this activity is more important than the anxiety that I might be aggravating my tinnitus is. The chances of me aggravating my tinnitus are minimal, but the importance of this situation or this activity is much bigger. So that already was a decision made. I was going to do it because it was more important than the anxiety of making the tinnitus worse. But there is rule number 2, or thought process number 2, which is very, very, very important. It was vital. If you see any of my other videos, you know that I'm very into hearing protection, earplugs, ear defenders, all sorts of stuff like that. So even though this activity is important, or was important to me, I'm still not going to be reckless, because that's silly. As a person with severe tinnitus, I don't have the, I don't have the possibility of being reckless. It's just not there to me. It's not available to me. I have to be careful. So the second thought process that I went through is, how can I do this activity in a way that doesn't aggravate my tinnitus? Or how can I do it in a way that limits the amount of volume coming into my head? Now, for me, that just meant simply wearing ear defenders on a plane, my -36 Vanderfields, I think they're called Vanderfields, ear defenders. They're comfortable. I don't suffer from the pressure of going up and down, which happens when you take off and come down. And they're just easy, they're very good. I pop them in, no one can see them, and it's all good. So I use those. When I was traveling through train stations and on trains, I was using my silicone molded earplugs that are about minus 30. They say minus 36, but I'm thinking they're probably about minus 33 in reality. Something else that I was doing, I was wearing combat trousers, because combat trousers are brilliant when you're traveling. There's a million pockets in them. And I was keeping some wet wipes in my combat trousers so that when I had to take my earplugs out or when I had to put them in, if my hands were dirty because I've been touching things, tickets and getting tickets and this, that, and the other, I could just disinfect my hands, put my earplugs in, and I know that I'm more or less okay. I don't want to, risk the chances of getting an ear infection or something like that. So I'm doing the activity that's really important to me. But number two, I'm doing it in a way that I consider to be safe, in a way that is reducing the amount of volumes coming into my ear and reducing the possibility of aggravating my tinnitus. Thought number three, something that I really believe in, and I mentioned this in my other videos. The more we do things we love, the bigger our lives become. The busier we are, the more enjoyment we get out of our lives, the bigger it becomes. And what happens is that the bigger our lives, the smaller the tinnitus. And the opposite, vice versa, also happens. The less we do things we love, the less we are busy enjoying our lives, the smaller our lives become, and the bigger the tinnitus becomes, because we are focusing more on it. And what can happen is we can get into a negative cycle where we start to blame lots of things on the tinnitus. If only I didn't have tinnitus, I could do this, I could do that. And then what happens is that the tinnitus gets more and more attention, gets bigger and bigger in size, and that's exactly what it wants. It wants your attention. It wants all that negativity because it grows and feeds off it. I really try and do the opposite. Make my life as big as possible. So let's take this journey, for example, from last week. It involved a lot of journeys on loud trains, but it also involved a lot of meeting great people, a lot of great discussions, a lot of really stuff that was feeding my soul, great ideas, being around some fantastic people, seeing old friends, going to my hometown of Birmingham, which I haven't been to in 12 years, all these really positive emotions coming into me that was so big. It got to the point where I forgot I was even going through a spike, and it's a pretty bad one. That's what I'm talking about. The busier you are doing things that you enjoy, the less focus you are putting on that very irrelevant and negative little thing that is called tinnitus, regardless of how bad your tinnitus is. And take it from someone that's got really bad tinnitus. This is no joke. I'm not talking about a little rustle in my ear. I'm talking I have really bad tinnitus. So it's not like I'm sort of making this stuff up as I go along, because I really know what I'm I know what I'm experiencing, and it's loud. But the more you're doing things, the smaller it becomes. I think that's quite important. And the last point that I want to share with you, or the last sort of thought process, I don't know why I'm calling them thought process. The last thought that I went through, let's put it that way, was I knew that there were going to be fluctuations. I knew that during this journey, my tinnitus was probably going to go up and down. So I made allowances for the fact that my tinnitus might fluctuate. So one of the nights that I was away, I was in a B&B in Wales. I woke up and my tinnitus was really loud. Now, 10 years ago, let's say 2016, so 8 years ago, right? If that would have happened to me, I would have panicked. Oh, I made my tinnitus worse. I shouldn't have done this. I knew I shouldn't have gone on this journey, right? That's the thought process that I would have gone through. But now I make allowances for it. I'm like, well, yeah, there's going to be ups and downs. I know that. I sort of packed that in with my suitcase. I knew it was going to happen. But the next day I was fine. The next day I was sort of getting on with it. And again, because I was so busy, I was just getting on with it. So what I was saying to myself is that as I go through this activity, I know that there's going to be ups and downs, and I got to make allowances for them because that's the reality of my situation. Again, it reduces the anxiety, it reduces the stress, it reduces this pushing against your tinnitus and blaming your tinnitus, that sort of thing. You just let it go. And the more you let go, the less power it has, the less importance it has, etc., etc. So I think it's important to allow for fluctuations while you are doing the activity you are doing. But I think it's important to end this video on the first point that I made in this video. Only you can decide whether you can do that activity that you want to do, how important it is to you. Only you know how bad your tinnitus is. Only you know how much of a risk that activity is to make your tinnitus worse. I can't possibly tell you that because I don't know what activity it is, and how bad your tinnitus is. So it's really important to say that, because obviously I don't want people doing stuff. Perhaps you're going through a spike and you start doing things that you maybe shouldn't, like you using power tools. I don't know, whatever it is that you might be considering. I cannot possibly tell you whether you should or should not do that activity. But I do think it's important to put ourselves through this thought process, because, like I say, I think it's important to put things in a value system, because if everything has the same value, then that's just not how life works. If something is really valuable to you, can you do that activity in a way that reduces your chances of making your tinnitus worse? Can you do it in a way that reduces your anxiety of making your tinnitus worse? These thought processes, I think, are important. And again, it's important because the bigger our lives, the smaller our tinnitus. I hope this video helps. I've got a website called helpmytinnitus.com where you can download my free PDF, 5 Tips for Tinnitus. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me around, I suppose. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.